I don't know, I get freaked out. And so like in my head, for some reason, we were gonna lift this up and there was gonna be like families. Hello and welcome back to Granted Gardens. My name is Melissa and today we are talking compost. About a year, 2 years ago, one of the things that we hadn't really started doing much of was composting. And so I talked to Tyler about it and he had this really cool idea for building a compost bin. Like you see right here, this is our compost bin that is made from pallets or skids. I have done a video on this before, but I'll do a quick recap. Essentially, we've got 5 pallets here. I did paint them at one point. Long story short, they were being used for something else. But so we just went ahead and Tyler built them, nailed them together so that we have 2 sections here. Essentially, the idea was that we were going to fill one and then have the other section to turn, and we would flip back and forth to help the process of the composting breakdown. However, this quickly became just like a catch-all, and really the only thing that we were putting in here initially was kitchen scraps and the bedding from the chicken coop when we cleaned out the chicken coop. We do have a mini composter that we keep in the kitchen, so we'll just come back here and dump those scraps as that fills up, but it wasn't really breaking down. So I did another video, I'll try and link it here, on my first attempt at actually composting to get it to actually process. Now, this was my first time ever doing this. I had just watched a bunch of YouTube videos basically and then just kind of winged it because that's usually how I handle life. All right, so I'm going to take you guys back around to the setup that I had. So I did this back in the spring and was hoping to be able to use this compost. Well, I'll be honest with you, I didn't keep up on it. It got really overgrown back here. I'm extremely allergic to poison ivy. I can just like basically stand downwind of it and get it. So I wasn't trying to like walk through all of this. Plus I got to the point where I was like, I don't know, something's probably living under there and I ain't doing this by myself. Tyler, help. All right, so I did it kind of back in the woods here. Right there is the compost bin that I was just showing you guys, the one that we built. And then over here was my first pile. So essentially I layered it properly with browns, greens, and water, and was waiting for it to break down. Now, it was initially 3 feet tall. So 3 feet tall by 3 feet wide. So it's definitely composted a bit, but this will be the first time that we've actually taken a peek at it. Which again, I ain't lifting that up until Tyler's like right here next to me. I'm chicken. So we are going to essentially build onto this, and we do want to make a few more piles if possible so that we can have something ready to go come spring next year. So I've been doing some cleaning today on the homestead, going through some of our plants that were summer plants that have died off, and kind of pulling them from the pots. So anything that wasn't sick, you want to make sure that it's not sick, it doesn't have any kind of disease. These were not sick at all, they just died off. They just died. There was nothing wrong with them, it was just their time to go. So I just kind of dumped the pots in here. You can see that there is a lot of roots. There's not quite as much dirt, it's mostly all roots, but that's good because that's going to break down and help build your compost. Now another thing that I have over here is some of the chicken bedding. This I cleaned out of the coop today, and then we just had a little bit of leftover soil here that was again from lettuce that had died off. So this is all great stuff to start with. And then last but not least, coffee grounds. So coffee grounds are excellent when you're trying to build compost. So we'll sprinkle this in as well. So when you're doing this, you want to make sure that you have parts brown plus parts green. Tyler is collecting the green now. Over here, if you can see him. So he's just picking up some of the overgrown grass, I don't know, I have weeds in the back, and making a little pile of them here so that we can incorporate that. Another thing you want to make sure you have access to is water. So this is something that I thought was really cool. Tyler kind of had buckets that he hung from this tree to collect water so that we don't have to lug water from the house all the way back here every time that we work on our compost. Is that going to be another pile?
This is my pile.
All right, that's Tyler's pile.
All right, so there's two main reasons why you want to flip and turn it as you go. If we had left this here just as it is, it would be considered cold compost. So it stays in one place, you don't really touch it, you can add to it as you want, and then you don't turn it because at the very core, it's gonna be nice and hot and moist. There's gonna be worms and all kinds of stuff coming in there to help break it down. If it was hot compost, which we're trying to do, you wanna keep turning it. That way you can bring more oxygen in, you can make sure that it's moist throughout the entirety of its mass. That way it breaks down twice as fast. Cold compost, normally, if you start that, say year one, day one, in 1 year, you probably won't be able to use it because it's not going to be broken down.
Okay, so this is going to be the big reveal. Like I said, I've not touched this pile since, like, I don't know, maybe a couple weeks after I did it the first time. And we've had so many people reach out and tell us to do an update on this. So here we go. We'll take a peek. All right.
Pretty dry.
Pretty dry. Pretty dry, but definitely squished down quite a bit. Oh, the inside looks pretty decent.
Not too dry.
Got the worms. Look at them guys. Got the worms going, so they're doing their job. But it's still not as broken down as we'd want it to be. You can see we still got pretty big chunks in here. No snakes. Yay. I don't know, I get freaked out. And so, like, in my head, for some reason, we were gonna lift this up and there was gonna be like families living in there.
Coming from somebody who doesn't know much about snakes because of her fear, there's always snakes in there.
There's snakes everywhere. So we just saw Tyler dump here. That was the chicken bedding that I cleaned out of the coop this morning. So we went ahead and put a layer of that down. We're covering it up with some of the compost. So you want to make sure you're layering everything. Lasagna layers. Got some of our coffee grounds we'll toss on there. So we put on a little bit more green after the coffee grounds, and then water. So you want to make sure you incorporate water pretty often because, as you mentioned, keeping this damp is going to be very important. Now I also just brought over a wheelbarrow here full of some of the dead plants that were in pots this year. So this is a really great way to incorporate those plants in those pots that might have a lot of dirt in them still without reusing it or wasting the dirt. So essentially, you don't necessarily want to reuse dirt year after year because when you do plant stuff in it, it takes out all the nutrients. So there really isn't anything left in there for a plant to grow off of. But by incorporating this dirt, as long as the plants weren't sick, you can incorporate it back into the system, and then you'll have the nutrients from the breakdown of the compost, and you can reuse it again the year after. All right, now hypothetically, you are going to want to come out here and turn this fairly often. In my research, 3 days. Every 3 days was ideal. Let's be honest, we work full-time, and a lot of times our homesteading stuff, the big projects, or even like smaller projects like this, turn into weekend gigs. So we're going to try our best, and I'll try and keep everyone updated as we go, but please have grace. What you got there?
Just some random wild mushrooms. The chances of this being what's called spore season. So if you look under a mushroom, these are all the gills. And when they're ready to reproduce, they'll actually have spores in between here. Now the chances that this actually has spores in it is pretty low, but just in case there are, adding some of that fungi to this is just a whole nother way to help break it down faster. And we're going to put that on here. And mycorrhizal inoculant, which is another type of fungi that you can add to the dirt when you plant stuff. And it helps break down all the composted stuff in the ground to help the plant grab those nutrients faster, and they are completely symbiotic together.
Get it? Oh, no, don't bring it to me. No, that's fine. You can just leave him there. Well, we found one. What is that? Oh, God.
Corn snake, maybe? It's not poisonous.
Where? Oh, yeah. See that? All right. Well, I wasn't wrong. Dear Lord, have mercy on my soul. Oh, my goodness. Hey. Oh, okay. No.
Hey, buddy.
Oh, yeah, he's in there.
He went right into it. Well, I guess you won't be turning.
No, I won't. I won't be turning the compost. Oh, dear Lord. At least he was tiny. Thank you, Jesus, for making him small. Amen.
This is a good example of something that you don't want in your compost. Now, this will break down over time, but in a hot compost, this may be a little too big, and you don't really want to necessarily have to pull this out next year. But like a good example would be something about this size. It's already soft, so that'll break down pretty quick. You want to keep it probably no bigger than a quarter for wood.
Okay, and then flip side, check out this. Like, those are the worms that are in our compost. They're massive. Like, that's snake-sized worm. Oh my goodness. Well, it's healthy. That's all we know, right? So I guess all of this is good signs.
Over top of this, that snake would never have been.
I guess that these are good signs that, like, the creatures are enjoying it. What you got?
This is lime.
Lime.
We're not going to use a whole lot of this. Paper, also really good for your compost pile. Paper specifically will bring the worms in. So, garden lime, or just any kind of hydrolyzed lime, will help break this down faster. It'll also keep a lot of the acids that get built up from the composting process from getting too acidic. So next year, like tomatoes, peppers, kind of like a little bit of acid stuff, but I think it's brassicas that like more base.
Rest of the water.
And then we're just gonna lightly mix this up a little bit more just to make sure that moisture gets in, and we don't want to have just a straight layer of lime on the top. So that's about it. We have a base of the old compost on the bottom, then green, then new, then green, then a little bit of the old, and you just want to keep layering that, because what actually happens is down here you can actually see that the layers are still there, and as the green breaks down, that's going to release the nitrogen back into this dirt, because it's not going to be on the top. Don't put your green on the top, because you're wasting the buildup of nitrogen that you can get out of that. And same thing with the sticks. Obviously, you can't keep everything on the bottom, but the more of the thick sticks that are down on the bottom, they'll actually help release nitrogen back into it too. You want to have like a pretty good ratio of green to brown. Grass clippings, dead plants from the garden. The only thing that you don't want to do in your compost is add stuff that's been diseased at all. A lot of the mold type diseases that happen in plants are actually in the dirt just as much as they are in the plant. So if you add that to this and then you grow zucchini next year or something else that can be affected by powdery mildew, it will come back because you've inoculated the ground or your compost with that.
Well, we also have a mouse. Oh, where did he go?
Right under your foot, so watch out. Don't step.
Don't let that snake find you. I was just telling Tyler, like, who needs to go anywhere when you've got this much adventure in your backyard? Mice, snakes,
mice, earthworms, dogs.
Well, thank you guys as always for hanging out with us today. Speaking of caterpillars, oh my goodness. Okay,
He's gone.
I'm getting the heebie-jeebies. It's time to go. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today. If you guys are doing your own compost and do stuff a little bit differently or the same, whatever works for you, comment below. We want to hear. As always, thank you for watching, and we look forward to sharing more with you soon.